All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. I'm going to talk today to Polish Christian Bale, also known as, what was it? Maciej Skalwokski.
Yeah,
That's
okay.
that's your real name,
You're
right?
very
Yeah.
close.
We
You're
get to
very
see your
close.
face for the first time today, rather
Indeed.
than just looking like Christian Bale. Yeah.
This is not what you
Um.
warned me about. Quote from
So
Terminator
we were
4.
going to
Yeah.
we'll probably have to talk about some of what we were going to talk about next time because we don't have that much time today. But yeah,
Sure.
we're going to start off with talking about just kind of like politics in general and how that can tell us about the postmodern condition. So it's related to politics and postmodernism, which were two of the topics that we were going to discuss. We get going though, do you want to kind of introduce yourself to those people who don't know you?
Sure. I mean, from all those people that don't know me, I am Maciej. I'm from Poland, and I'm a motion designer, you could say, art director, something like that. I mean, I do creative stuff. I do visuals mainly, and people like those.
Okay.
Yeah, that's me. And okay, and I think that's a good thing to just okay. Out of the sudden, you guys have this possibility to listen about Poland, Eastern Europe, basically, and and those politics things, because people just talk about this far right all the time, and out of the sudden, half of the Europe became far right. Kinda yeah, but kinda no. And the most important thing about Europe is the ridiculous inconsistency of it. People just don't get it. There is no. I mean, we do have this European Union, and what the most important thing about European Union, that you have this free trade stuff. That was the point of those ridiculously genius French guys and German guys after the Second World War. Their idea about how to create this. Oh my goodness, I don't know how to say it in English because I know the Polish name. Excuse me, a lot of this dictionary is in Polish for me, so it's going to be a little bit sketchy. But what they were thinking about this European Union was that we have to create a system that is strictly economic, that is without any kind of ideology, because we had those ideologues recently, like Adolf and Joseph Stalin in Russia,
Right.
and those guys just fucked us up ridiculously. So what we want to do right now, we want to just connect people using basically technology of economy, uh, being honest. And that's, on one hand, it's a ridiculously wonderful thing, because we had the worst conflicts on the planet. Good evening.
Sorry,
We
that's
had the
my
worst.
that's my dad getting something behind me there.
Okay, hey, say hi. I say hi. We had the worst conflicts on the planet in the first half of the 20th century, and we had basically no conflicts in the European Union in the second half of the century. And being honest, my generation, or even the older generations than mine, they cannot imagine stuff like that, and they wouldn't see a reason for a conflict. And that's a huge, one of the most important projects in the history of humanity, I would say, this European Union is. But on the other side, this aspect of not having ideology, any kind of ideology behind that, just having this trade, it just forced us into what we are doing right now, into this emergence of Jordan B. Peterson and telling about hierarchical structures, which is kind of cool and kind of not. And we have problems with guys like Donald Trump that go backwards into this modernity era. Yeah, that they're not interested in this basic, maybe postmodern project that is European Union, because it happens post modernity. It's just recent, and it's so different from all the things people were doing before. Okay, so going into details, when you think about European Union and when you think about what is happening in Eastern Europe, um, is that economy doesn't work so good, and people have this very similar notion to what is happening in States with Donald Trump, because Donald Trump said this wonderful quote that is ridiculously retarded as he is. I mean that, but it's kind of brilliant, because what he said was that global economy fucked United States of America up, which is probably the most stupid thing I ever heard. But there is some sort of merit, because when you think about United States, you think East Coast, West Coast, you think Silicon Valley, and you think that global market is basically the most important thing for those guys. This is why they are so rich and fat and things. But on the other side, what he was talking about was this red states, all of those guys that were just working in factories, because there was a lot of industry in states. The same situation here, especially in Eastern Europe, especially when you are old enough, when you're 50 or 60, when you're old enough to remember about Cold War.
Right.
Because during Cold War, Soviet space, because it was Soviet Union and a bit of places around, they were grinding out, they were building stuff, and they were actually fighting with United States. This again a bit postmodern war, this Cold War, because it wasn't so sure that this Soviet Union is just so terrible and they're just killing their own people, and there is nothing behind that, because in the 70s, in the middle of the 70s, guys on the West were thinking about losing the Cold War, basically. So these are things that are just very 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 into our soul, our maybe genetic memory of this type of economy of the second half of the 20th century. And what is happening right now here in Poland and in Eastern Europe is people are feeling those changes. People, baby boomers are not interested, and they're not capable of going into technology and learning how to code, using JavaScript, and because that's what those new globalists, let's say, this is what they're talking about, right? That we need to move into the future. We need to change the the spectrum of what we are doing on this planet, and everybody should learn to code.
Right.
And yeah, and when you look into the politics, I mean, those guys on the right, they just do exactly what they're supposed to. I mean, they tell people that okay, we're going to come back to the old ways, because this is basically what right is doing, right? I mean, all the time they are conservatives. They want the world that works. They want to keep the world as it works in a very good way. But if it's possible, it's a wonderful thing. But it's not possible because machines are too smart for that.
Right.
Yeah. So okay. So this is this.
That sounds like the jobocalypse.
Yeah, exactly. That sounds like Andrew Yang is Yang Gang 2020. He is a guy that is going exactly the opposite way. I mean, he's basically brilliant, and he's got it. That this is exactly what is going to happen, and we need to start a new paradigm. We need to start a new understanding of things. We need to do a new math about things, because this type of thinking that we are going into those old ways, and we'll come back to this modern grind that just destroys planet, being honest.
Right. Yeah, like you were saying,
absolutely impossible.
It's an aspect of the postmodern era, like you were talking about. That's interesting how you were saying too, that the Cold War is a postmodern war too, because that's
Exactly.
interesting, and that's like even more the case today, I would say, right, with the drone strikes and not even declaring war on countries when, like, for example, Bush and Obama and Trump are all drone striking countries without actually officially declaring war on them and stuff like that.
Yeah, I mean, this is post modernity. I mean, it's cool because I mean, we start first of all. Okay, if we okay, because now I'm thinking that it is a cool idea. I just figured it out with a friend of mine that this moment when you start post-modernity and see that there are so many things that people are doing on this planet that out of the sudden change their core aspects. Because Cold War was a war without any shot, being honest, without any rocket being shot into anything. But it was still a war because everybody was talking about being on war, and that's absolutely fantastic. I mean, then you can say that United States of America is the first postmodern empire, because when you compare United States of America to British Empire, for instance, I mean, Americans have most weapons in the history of humanity, but if they use them, it's always a fuck up. When British used those weapons, they were just annexing a new place. Okay, so they had a half of the planet, and when they were shooting somebody, they were shooting to kill and grab its resource. Americans, when they use force, they talk about ideology, Zizek style.
That reminds me too of when I was talking with Drew Sample yesterday on this podcast. We were talking a little bit at one point about nuclear weapons and about how there's this one school of thought where it's a good thing for people to have nuclear weapons, especially when several different countries have them, as is the case now, because then everyone's afraid to use them, because if one person uses them, then everyone else uses them, which is like, it's sort of that situation to the extreme if you're talking about something like the Cold War, right? I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I like that. You know what I mean? Because that's the point. The point with postmodernity. Okay, we are throwing this thing postmodernity as probably everything right now, and I'm okay with that, because we should do that, because I don't like the situation where a bunch of girls basically from academia just take this word for themselves and just do basically nothing with it. I mean, okay,
and it means gender, it means identity politics, and
and all of a sudden you have this clinical psychiatrist that is basically saying stupid stuff, but it's not his fault, because those guys on the left, they really do that. I mean, they really say that there are no differences between people, everything is oppression, and they just misquote Foucault every single time, which is just ridiculous. And Foucault is just one of my favorite guys. And I just
he's rolling in his grave hearing people talking about how it's modern to use 100 different gender pronouns.
Jesus Christ! I mean, he was so cool. Coming back to nuclear weapons, though, I like this point, and I would just go to Heidegger, I think, because Heidegger had this wonderful wonderful piece about technology. And basically what I loved most about Heidegger is his idea that everything evolves into something else from what it was in the very beginning of the process and during the process. And this is this postmodernity, because you had so much, so it was such a long period of time where things were so similar to each other. And you had this enlightenment thinking that things just grow and technology just expands and everything is becoming better and better and better. And his idea was that the bomb was this moment when technology just became a way to mass destruction, let's say. And you might say that technology always helped people build weapons, but the most important thing here is that the nuclear weapons, they have this impact on human imagination.
Oh
And
yeah.
that's the thing. That's, yeah, that's that's the postmodernity for me. If we're talking about this healthy postmodernity, I mean, we start to be abstract enough to think about possibilities rather than, uh, a plan, a master plan. Yeah,
Okay.
hierarchies. Those, yeah, because I don't like vertical hierarchies, however you pronounce that
Hierarchies.
in
Yeah.
English. Excuse me. Hierarchies. Thanks. I don't like this stuff because it's when we talk about postmodernity, that's the most important thing. That just those old things, they don't work anymore,
Yeah.
and you have signals of that in so many places. You have that in literature. You have that in ideology. You have that in philosophy. You have that in technology. You have that in politics and everywhere else. Yeah, and okay, so
Yeah. Totally.
yeah,
Yeah. I
okay,
know. I know what you mean.
that's all.
Like the
Hmm.
we're seeing that more and more today. I think like the old ways of doing things are really not that effective anymore. Like another example of that I'm thinking of is like one thing that you briefly mentioned too, the idea of the jobocalypse, where automation and technology are taking away some people's jobs. So we need to figure out a new way to provide people with some sort of an income, and that's part of why this idea of the universal basic income, or which is one of many proposed solutions for solving that problem, is I
Hmm.
think is interesting too.
My favorite, I think. I mean, I think that Andrew Yang is actually, the smartest guy since I remember on the left,
Yeah, I like him
and
too.
yeah, because those people, like, I mean, maybe Elizabeth Warren is also okay, but her idea of dismantling big technology, I mean, yeah, but she's incapable of doing that, because when you look into the American politics, it's just the last 2 decades. It's just a history of incapabilities. Because okay, so George W. Bush was a war president, so it's a
Yeah.
different thing. So it's a different thing because everything they were just uh, they were just um, spending money just like
Okay.
that because they were supposed to. And but the problem with Obama is that, okay, yes, we can, but exactly what is that we are doing? I heard a very smart thing from a quite smart Jewish guy that was living in New York for 40 years, that Barack Obama is the first American president who I have no fucking idea what he thinks, because I don't believe any single thing, because everything is um, is a simulation. Yeah, everything what he's talking about is policy.
Oh yeah. That's
George
like
W.
that idea of the hyper real in postmodernism that
Mhm.
particularly people like Zygmunt Bauman talk about from like a
Mm.
sociological perspective too, right?
Wonderful Polish Jewish guy. Jesus Christ, he is absolutely great. I mean, he was,
Yeah.
he was this great old man, because he was. I mean, he was an old person when he was born, and he had this vibe of okay, so being nurtured by modernity. And his idea was that this movement of postmodern reality just is something that started, something that happened in history, and everything changed. I don't believe that. I believe that world was always moving, and it was moving into this direction. It was
Yeah, that
moving
makes
into this
sense.
right now, but we never had tools good enough to understand that. Diagnostically, we were too slow, and the reality was moving so slowly that we didn't see any movement at all. And people were just buying books, and they just put those books on their shelves, and those books were just there till they died. What people do right now, they just change systems, they change their favorite, they change how they behave because of reading books. For lack of better, words, I should just construct it differently. But you know what I'm going, right?
Yeah, I know what you mean.
Oh,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and maybe that's okay. So thinking about this postmodernity and some sort of healthy, aspects of it. I mean, that's the coolest thing about postmodernity, that people grab this. Um, Everything is a matter of words, and we can always rewrite words. So in this
yeah.
sense, we can rewrite the reality. That's my biggest problem with Bauman, because he was a little bit too old to understand that. And for him, this postmodernity was actually, destruction of some sort of his own state. But the younger you are, and the faster you go into this movement, you understand that, okay, so if everybody is doing just words, everybody's right now going into Bitcoin. Okay, so everything is open, right? I mean, everything is rewritable, and we can just go so many places.
Yeah, I think that's the sort of reason that people like Jordan Peterson have such a problem with postmodernity, because like if you're looking at aspects of the postmodern era and the postmodern condition, it makes you really uncomfortable if you're like, the older you are, especially if you're in an older generation like you were talking about, and you're used to the way things are, so you're more uncomfortable if the status quo shifts or even like gets totally dismantled.
Yeah, exactly. But being honest, when I was talking about that, I wasn't saying that postmodernity is just genuinely good.
Oh,
I was
yeah,
just
of
trying to
course.
describe. I said that. Okay, so I'm
Yeah,
interested in just describing what is the healthy,
yeah,
aspect of this postmodernity.
yeah. Like
The problem is that this stuff.
even authors like Bauman, who we mentioned, a lot of postmodern authors, when they're describing the postmodern era and the postmodern condition, they don't label that as a good thing. Like they even arguably label it as a bad thing sometimes, right?
Hmm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and when we just as young people talk about stuff, I mean, the level of anxiety is rising.
yeah.
And the problems of this postmodern world are kind of ridiculous, because when we think about that, we can figure those out, but we are so intertwined with those old ways of being. We have those old people, we have uh, excuse me, when one for a moment. We
Okay.
have a bunch of old people that talk about old stuff. Yeah, like this. Maybe you know what? I didn't say one thing about Poland, and that's really really cute thing, because everybody is saying that this is this new alt-right movement that is happening everywhere on the in the Europe and in States. I mean, the point is that there is when you think about that, this Polish aspect is so different from others, because it's not alt-right, it's just ridiculously mainstream right, as mainstream right as you can go. This
Oh, okay. So what?
Catholic thing. I mean, I was reading so much, this Catholic mainstream right stuff at school, that it was just natural. And
Oh,
guys at my age, they and there is, unfortunately, because I mean, I always say that our nationalism, Polish nationalism, is softcore. It's not as ridiculous as in the other places, but it's not a good thing. It's the worst thing, because there is
oh,
legitimacy for that, because we were the last national state in Europe in 1790, people 1798, I think. Okay, so the end of 18th century, Poland was the only sensible, let's say, I mean, kind of important national state, and we had empires all over the place. You know, There's Austrians, Russians, and Prussians, and you had France that started to have, half of the planet. You have a British Empire and stuff, and there is a very strong, mainstream thinking about nationalism here, and that's the worst thing, because the more you have of this type of aspects, that okay, so we remember things, we have those things written down in history books, and more you see this stuff as softcore and mainstream. So the stronger you believe this shit. But the problem is that it's just so old and it doesn't work.
Right.
Obviously, you see this so much better with Donald Trump, because everything that he touches is automatically toxic. We have the same problem here. We have the same problem here because, okay, so the biggest problem with this establishment, the softcore right establishment, is that those guys are ridiculously terrible. They're intellectually absolutely nowhere. Right. I mean, you had this argument that in States there were a bunch of guys around Donald Trump that had some, okay, so they were the adults in the room, sort of, kind of, if there are any left, okay, so, but there are no adults in the room right now in Poland, and our foreign policy is just the worst in the history, in the recent history. Absolutely, it's just a terrible mess, and this is the most.
Why is it a mess?
It's a mess because they're not interested in being in the European Union, because they really think that there is this Polish state that will be protected by Jesus Christ and Mary.
Holy shit! Wow.
Shit, yeah, that's the point.
I mean, really old, like traditional conservative.
I mean, I mean, it's not more traditional than PANS, but it's very similar to PANS. It's very similar. But I always had this this feeling that this Polish nationalism, this Catholic nationalism, will collapse, because Catholic Church must collapse. And being honest, in Poland, Poland is the most consistent, ethnically consistent place on the planet. 98% of people that believe into anything, they believe in Catholic God.
Oh, okay.
There are no other religions,
wow.
And everybody is white. Yeah, and everybody is white. So we have no racial tensions, and that was the coolest thing for Catholic Church in the beginning of the 90s, because they were just they were the guys that won the war with communists. That was the narrative, honestly, and even those atheist intellectuals, they were going to church and they were just understanding, okay, this is the price we pay for winning with those fucked up communists.
Who were some of those like some of those atheist intellectuals?
Bunch of them.
Okay.
You really need names? I mean, they were.
I might not recognize the names, or
you wouldn't. I mean, that's a cool thing about Poland, that there was always intellectual grind, let's say, for lack of my better English capabilities, and there was always this understanding that we need some sort of intellectuals, a bunch of intellectuals living in Warsaw and in Gdańsk, where I'm close to. I'm living here, and everybody had this understanding that this is the price we pay for winning with communists, and winning in a very good style, being honest, because that was like everybody was waiting for shooting and blood on the streets. There was just everything was like we're handshake, and we just moved forward into its global capitalism.
Right.
And honestly, I mean, it worked ridiculously awesome here. GDP is 5 times higher than in '89. These are ridiculous. I mean, this is ridiculous math. When you look into Asia, or in what will happen in Africa, those numbers will be even better. But it's because we are in the different state of capitalism, we have more machines, and things just go so much faster than in the 90s. Nevertheless, like I say, those things work. And this is another aspect that comes. I mean, this is, if we say that this globalism is still this modern aspect of things because it comes from the 90s, because it's something like the thinking about the expansion of any technical revolution, like of the 19th century, machines and factories. So yeah, you can go with that.
Oh, so
This is how
like
you just build your imagination.
okay, so like the acceleration of technology and automation, like we were talking about, that's like another thing that that
I went too far. Being honest, I went too far, and just I got lost. But you are into something right now.
yeah, no,
Because I said too many words. Excuse me.
okay.
But go there. Go there.
I'm just talking about how like a lot of postmodern writers talk about how much the world changes with the increase of technology, and how it becomes more ubiquitous and interwoven into our lives. Like you can see that with how much I know you're talking about technology in terms of like the economy and stuff like that, but that is interesting too. Like if you look at how digital trades are made, like tons of different trades per second now instead of the way they used to be done, and like how this the technology being everywhere affects all of our lives too. Like we're all on social media constantly, and how that's sort of related to what you were saying earlier about how it's related to how everyone's getting so depressed because Western society is becoming so successful that we don't have our needs met, so we start taking all these antidepressants and opiates and stuff, and then they make us less happy, and we don't have any real problems, so we are always like looking for emotional problems that give us the same emotional negative responses, like actually running from a lion or something like that.
Okay, we can go. I mean, I get that. I like what you're saying, but we could go from this place into couple of ideas, because
Sure.
first of all, you might ask, but does it really work so good? So
Yeah.
why there are so ridiculously high, qualified little kids, maybe 20-year-old people that cannot find a job?
Right.
Okay, so it's not that the success story of us building this civilization where every need is met, because needs are not met.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the
Yeah.
point. That's the point. So there are some aspect when I was, and that was tricky, because when I was talking about this, this healthy postmodernism, this cool aspect of postmodernism, I was saying that okay, so we have young people understanding that stuff is designable. So that's a great thing, because I can design stuff myself, and there are no hierarchies, vertical hierarchies. Um, Everything. I mean, Deleuze figured it out beautifully with this understanding of. I mean, this idea of rhizomatic thinking, that there is no going up into higher
Oh yeah.
stages of understanding everything, but
Yeah.
everything is like rhizomes, that wherever you are, you can intellectualize yourself into
Yeah.
core concepts. You might be a lawyer, you might be an innovation expert, and just go into. And this is what we see with even mixed martial arts. So many people that are so
Yeah.
different, and still we just talk about stuff. We just talk about Jordan Peterson all the time, and other wonderful things, and other
Yeah.
wonderful things. And yeah, and this is just where we are going, but it doesn't change the fact that uh, basically the core, thinking about things is ancient, being honest. I mean,
Yeah.
and that's what's cool about Andrew Yang, that he is, smart enough to figure out a new discourse.
Yeah.
That I mean, and he gets that. He gets that. So okay, so this is one thing that okay, so world is not, it's not a success story
Yeah. Yeah.
that much. And
Yeah.
I like those two brilliant guys, Jalan Lanier and Andrew Keane,
Oh, yeah.
who really, yeah, they think about this stuff and they go into this stuff, and they say that there are not so many success stories that come from this global internet thing. So if you have creatives, if you have people that should, gain all of this stuff using social media, you don't see any success stories. And yeah, I do think so, because this internet thing, this social media stuff, it fucked a lot of things up, especially creativity.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So are you saying like we hear more about these sexist stories with the internet and with with technology and the internet, it destroys creativity because because there are distractions and because it takes away the authenticity of how you had to be creative before, or what exactly do you mean by
I
that?
was thinking so different things from what you
Oh,
just said,
okay.
but
So
it's also it's cool what you're saying, because it shows how many places we can go from this just
sure.
one idea, right? Because I was thinking about, creative market, let's say. I mean, okay, so that's the coolest thing, because when you look at Facebook, when you look at Instagram, for instance, I have an Instagram account, and I just hate this stuff so much. I mean, it's just so idiotic. I mean, I hate Instagram. Yeah, because it's you
I've
don't
never
even
even I've never even started an account on there.
you don't even put any kind of viral videos that could show that there is some sort of intelligence behind you. You just show your ass and you show your face, and that's basically what you can do there. Totally, totally. But there is this climate that this is the moment where we just became creative. Okay, so now creativity is something that everybody can get, and that everybody is just capable of going into. But the thing is that it doesn't work like that. I mean, making money in the creative market is so difficult. It's
Yeah.
unbearable, and I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because creatives should grind a little bit more. We all should work. We all should work. We
Yeah.
all should just become better than we are, and we shouldn't just lose the momentum, let's say. But this propaganda of creative success on social media, it's a very interesting thing, but I'm afraid it's a different podcast, because there's
It's
so many things we could go with that, because it's not even I couldn't even give you just one, or maybe, I don't know, two ideas that would push it anywhere. I mean, there are so many aspects about that.
yeah.
The
It's
difference
like
of Facebook.
there's still like one aspect of that I would say for sure is that with the internet you still see like this hierarchy of people who actually can earn money. Like people earn the most at the top, and then it goes kind of down from there, and the and then there's the smallest number of people at the top who make the most money, and then the and then going down from there to the different levels of the hierarchy. Let's say the larger the number of people, the more the number of people increases, the less money they make. So that most people are making hardly any money at all. It's like that Pareto principle, I think it's called, where something like 20% of the people make 80% of the money or something like that. But it's probably even a more extreme shift than that, I would say.
It's worse than that. It's much worse than
Yeah.
that. You know what? The problem with it's okay. So it will take too much work. We need to do another podcast about that. But
For sure.
yeah, we will. I mean, the point is that when I was doing a thing here in Poland in 2011. I started in 2011, and it was a Facebook thing. And I grabbed the momentum, and people were just writing about me in newspapers and stuff. I mean, those little funny thing in the internet. And I started being really interested in all this stuff. And the idea was that the Facebook is a place where everyone can finally start doing marketing. That was the idea. And even worse than that, there was this promise that if you do things correctly, if you are funny, if you are viral, you will succeed. And that's the biggest problem, because that was just a promise, that was a lie that everybody was talking about. And the fact is that it took Zuckerberg half a year or maybe 1 year from that moment, 2012, when Zuckerberg finally changed algorithms. I lost 90% of my viewers, and I had to start paying money to to show my stuff to my viewers. Okay, so I had to start paying money. But yeah, that's what Facebook is about right now. When we are on when we use groups, we don't see that. When we are in mixed martial arts groups, it works differently. But when you are doing a little thing and you want to grab an audience for that, you need to pay money to give people free content. And this is what people are doing right now. People are just paying money to show other people free content. And and what changed from since then was that you okay, so the big players started to understand that Facebook is still an infrastructure to do marketing. But the problem is little players like you, and maybe not me because I do this stuff for a living, but there are so many people that just throw stuff into the internet with this understanding that this is how people do things. And being honest, this is just a time waste. And you have so many companies where you have so many companies that do Facebook that doesn't convert, and in any possible way. Just when you are an Audi, you need to do this stuff because Mercedes-Benz already does that. But okay, then you go into those bakeries, you go into those little pubs and things and stuff. And okay, and this is what out of the sudden everybody is doing, and nobody even knows how to start thinking about, okay, so how do I do this math about that? And there is no sensible math. But like I said, I mean, there's so many things. I mean, and you just went into some shortcuts with that. So okay, so you could just push back a little bit. But okay, so maybe the next podcast with that.
Yeah. No, that's it. That makes a lot of sense. Like, I'm sure you're right too. Like, a lot of people are just wasting their time and throwing their content out there, and not really many people see it. Which is, I mean, I guess that's one thing. That's probably a good way in a way for you, because that's what you do, right? Like, show people how to do that in a better way.
Yeah, but the problem is that there is no money in this business, and I had this because I also had this feeling that we will go away from this understanding that, okay, from now on everybody can do marketing because we have this infrastructure to do marketing, every single one of us. I mean, the problem is so much different, because it was probably Drucker that said that, because if you don't remember a quote, you always say that it was Drucker, and you're basically almost right. And he said that, half of my marketing is just useless.
Oh, yeah.
But I have no fucking idea which half it is. So I'll pay those two those two halves, and and that's so true. I mean, he was living in the bonanza of capitalism. He was working with General Motors, right? So in this moment in history, he was doing smart things, and he didn't have diagnostic machine to know what works and what doesn't. Today, I mean, and that was even the second lie of Facebook, that right now you have so many analytics around it. You have so much data that you do understand that you will do the proper math. You will see where are those places that actually work and where are those places that actually don't. Because you see likes, and you can see, from what places those likes come. But still, it doesn't like that, because you see too many Facebook, posts and stuff that just become garbage, and kids even don't want to look at this stuff, and they just browse further.
Yeah.
From there. Yeah. I mean, yeah, and that's the point about postmodernity. I mean, it's much more complex. Maybe it's the first moment in the history that is a little bit too complex for our intellectual capabilities.
Yeah, I think you're probably right. Like, I'm lots of people have made the point. Like, one of them is Joe Rogan. I know has made this point, for example, but he was far from the first person to point out that the technology is changing so fast that our bodies and our minds cannot adapt to it, because we're still used to the old infrastructure and the old culture and the way things work. Like, we're not used to having all this technology available to us and having phones in front of us all the time and all this sort of stuff. So that's part of why people develop problems, because it's just, you can have access to this sort of thing all the time, and our bodies are evolutionarily designed to try to get as much of that as possible at once, right?
Yeah, exactly. But you know what? And still, because so I'm all over the place with being, emotional about this stuff. Once I love this, postmodernity. Once I hate it. Let's go with that. Maybe it works. Maybe it's a good idea. Because I was thinking recently, my favorite American product is NBA.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it is. And recently there was a wonderful interview of Bill Simmons with this general manager of NBA, this Uber executive Adam Silver, this great, ridiculously smart Jewish guy, and he said something like, "Oh my, we have a huge problem with anxiety with players. They're ridiculously unhappy, and that's so awesome because they have no right to be unhappy. They are millionaires." Doing what they love,
right?
And that's what, and that's so cool that we evolved as a society, not as human beings, not as organisms. We evolved into something that was figured out by those brilliant Buddhists 2,000 years ago. Yeah, that because this is exactly what we are doing right now. Is sort of kind of the idea of Buddhist hell, that Buddhist hell is a place that is 100% exactly what you think happiness is.
Oh, interesting.
You get that, and then you just you achieve.
Paradise is not what you expected it to be.
I mean, hell is exactly what paradise is for you.
Right.
Something like that. Hell is exactly what. So when you are a blue collar guy in the 50s, your paradise is TV and newspaper and no work.
Right.
And there was even this I don't know, this X-File from the 50s that they did there. And there was a guy that was just reading newspaper all the time, and then he just he went to to see an angel that was guarding him, and he said, okay, I would like to go away from here because I just got so bored. And this guy just said, I mean, sorry, mate. I mean, that's hell. This is where you stay for forever. And this is the coolest thing when you have those brilliant guys that are unhappy because they are doing things that they love and they grab millions of dollars because of that. That's so great. But Irving, he wants to grab, I don't know, five championships, which with exactly the team he would like to grab without Kevin Durant, because with Kevin Durant will get too much credit for that. I mean, just it's so fucking awesome. Because this is we just went into those places. There were so many, I mean, not so many, there were a couple of ridiculously brilliant guys in the history that were saying that we as a civilization, we are going into scary positions. And this will happen. And postmodernity is so cool because it's the first moment in history when we see that, when you have the capability of seeing that.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. The first way, the first time that you can see, the first time that it happens, but the first time that you can see it. I think it's particularly more the second one than the first one, because I mean, I don't know, maybe there were other points at different times in history when you could say that there was the development of sort of like the postmodern era or the postmodern condition, but now since we've developed these intellectual capabilities that we probably already had before, but maybe didn't practice until we got these intellectual fields like sociology and history stuff. Maybe they're easier to see now. Or
it was
something
never.
like
It was never rhizomatic. It was always. It was this. There was all. There were always a couple of guys. There was always Buddha. There was always Jesus. There was Marshall McLuhan, your Canadian friend of yours, who is ridiculously brilliant. There was Goethe, who was in the 19th century, 18 even. I don't remember. It was. He was saying that the end of history, the end of civilization will come with a generation of kids that have ridiculous intellectual capabilities and they will believe nothing.
Right.
And that was why he was always making this impression that he was believing in Christ, and he despised Christ, and he despised the cross. It was just magnificent because he was just making this impression that he believes, because he had this idea that people need to believe things, because without this emotional structure, IQ will just kill us all. He was waiting for maybe atomic bombs, stuff like that. I mean, these are wonderful things, and I have this feeling that you just need to go. Am I right?
Oh,
a bit,
no,
yeah.
I should get going pretty soon, I guess. But
I get that. So we just started 7 ideas, seven podcasts,
no,
right?
yeah, definitely need to talk again, man. It's too bad I didn't have as much time this time.
No, that was the best thing, because we see about, I mean, we didn't need to make an impression that we are civilized people, that there is any kind of structure behind me, for instance.
Yeah, for
I just
sure.
love going into places. That's cool. I mean, that's what Foucault was doing. But he was French and he was gay and he read so many books that it was so much easier for him. That I just punch people in the face. I don't care. Boom, 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 boom. This is my book. Fuck off.
Yeah.
Let's go. Let's go places. Let's not think too much about going places.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, very, very well said. Yeah. So I guess we can leave off. We can leave it here for now, and definitely talk again about several topics that we sort of alluded to the next time we talk. So yeah, I'll say all the stuff I like to say at the end of my videos here, and then you can give any last thoughts or plugs. So yeah, thanks everyone so much for watching another episode of the Mindgasms podcast. This was a great episode with Polish Christian Bale, and thanks to everyone who likes and shares this video, and to those of you who subscribe to my channel, and especially to those of you who contribute to me on Patreon. I really appreciate that, and I'll add the link for my Patreon page in the description for this video, like I always do. And like I always say, I love you all. Keep being the tiny beam of light that shines through the almost impenetrable darkness in the universe. And most importantly, always remember this: the funk cures all. All right. Keep having mindgasms, everyone. And any last words or plugs there?
No last words. I mean, I'm just working on my plaques, and maybe one of another, mindgasms, I'll just finally push those forward, but still just, being in my places, just showing my face for the first time, just little steps, right?
Yeah.
Little
Yeah,
steps, little
for
steps.
sure.
Okay, great time. Thanks,
All right.
thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks a lot, man. And adios until next time, everyone.